Hello, my name is Josephine, and this is Languages, an academy of knowledge economy. Tuesday like this, I teach a core course in philosophy of religion, theology, religion proper, and spiritual formation. On Fridays, I speak on general issues, trending issues that are beneficial, issues that are critical and important to our lives, so that we can learn from each other and be a better citizen. I'm going to continue on what I started some Tuesdays ago on metaphysics, that is, metaphysical issues in philosophy of religion. And today, I'm going proper into metaphysical issues, talking about what is being and the two words theory. And like I usually do, I'm going to ask you to get ready by taking your pen and your paper as I present my PowerPoint presentation. But before I go into the teaching, I want us to join Languages. Thank you. For those of you who are just joining me for the first time, my name is Josephine, and this channel is known as Languages, an academy of knowledge economy. I teach core courses on Tuesday like this, and on Fridays, I talk on trading of germane issues. Today, I'm continuing on the teaching of metaphysics in philosophy of religion, and I'm taking the very first series in metaphysical issues. If you have watched my videos of the last two or three Tuesdays, I have given you a broad introduction into metaphysics, and I've also taught you about scholars' definition about metaphysics. And today, I'm going into metaphysical issues. So as I share my PowerPoint presentation, like I said earlier on, please take your pen, take your paper to journal notes, or just listen to me. And I can assure you, you are going to learn something. And for those of you who are new to this channel, please encourage me by subscribing. Just click the subscribe button, and then you can like my page. And I love feedbacks, because of feedbacks help me to know I am actually communicating. Your feedbacks, your comments, let me know that I'm actually impacting people with my teachings. So do not hesitate to make comments at my description box, or you also find my email addresses there. The two emails are Gmail for the Languages and with JOE Shoboyejo. I put the email down there. You can also reach me via my email. So hold on now as I share my PowerPoint presentation. Metaphysical issues. What is being? And two world theories. We have theory A, we have theory B. You could see the man with the universe in his hand. I said it earlier on that metaphysics is teaching on the reality of nature. Anything that you cannot prove with empirical formula or with scientific evaluation, that is metaphysics for you. And it covers a lot. And I introduce all these aspects of metaphysics in my very first video, where I gave you a general introduction of what metaphysics is all about. What is being? That's the question we are answering now. What is being? What is being? Men in the past who were perspective came to different conclusions about the essential building elements in the world. Let's start with the 6th century. Thales concluded that all is water ultimately. Pythagoras reasoned that all is number. Others concluded that being is composed of air or fire, and Heraclitus was so impressed with the changing elements in the world that he concluded that all things flow and nothing is constant, that everything is auto-flowing and nothing is constant. Democritus concluded that the world is composed of atoms, while others reasoned that nouns, or what we call reason, was the integrating element. Later, it was fashionable to believe that some mysterious substance lay behind what was visible. The answers are given to what is being. Hello. Are you following me? Are you seeing what I'm talking about? You could see different scholars, different philosophers giving their own definition, giving their own meaning to what is being. But being is unknowable. In his critique of pure reason, Immanuel Kant, a great philosopher, made 2 critical points in maintaining that being is unknowable. First, Kant said, reason can never tell us anything about the ultimate world. Reason cannot get to the outside world, the world beyond the mind. The reason is dependent on the senses for its information. And if the senses give information to the mind, then reason can work with it. Still, the reason is essentially captured within the framework of man's being and cannot get out to investigate apart from the senses. So Immanuel Kant gives a resume of the critic in that reason by all is a priori principles, never teaches us anything more than objects of possible experience, and even of this, nothing more that can be recognized in experience. The second point is that the senses provide only representations, or what we call images, of the world in which we live, in which the man lives. Thus, the images or representations are one step removed from the natural objects. On Kant's ground, one can never compare images to know if one sees correctly, because it depends on where you are viewing that particular image from, the side you are. So since one only deals with representations, then one is ignorant about the real world. Thus, Kant concludes that all we know is about phenomena, which is not very secure knowledge, while we can never get behind phenomena to what Kant called noumena. It leaves a measure of skepticism around the world. I cannot describe the world from where I live in Georgia, United States of America, because what I'm seeing about the world is what the images and representations that are around me. If I live here and go elsewhere, like I have done in the past, God has enabled me to visit some countries. I've been to Polski, that is Poland. I've been to the United Kingdom. When I look at the United Kingdom, the world there, I see something different from what I saw in Polski and Poland. It's different from what I saw in Italy. It's different from what I saw in Jamaica. It's different from what I saw in South Africa. It's different from what I saw in United Arab Emirates. It's different from what I saw in Spain. It's different from what I saw in Ghana or Benin or Republic of Mauritius or Liberia or Sierra Leone. Some of these countries I've been to, when I'm there and I'm describing the world from there, I see their images and representation of where I am. That is what Kant is saying, that you cannot describe the world correctly from the images or representation you are viewing where you are in your area. And that's why the Kant called noumena. It leaves a measure of skepticism around the world. This part of Kant's view has come to be called phenomenalism. It has been subjected to various criticisms, and there is no need to rehash them here. I'm not going to go and repeat them or say it there. But 2 points may be remembered. Whenever a philosopher asserts that we cannot know being or reality, he still asserts knowledge about it. He says it cannot be known because it is a claim about being or reality. It may not be much, but it is information about why this or that is not reality or being, and why we cannot know it. The second point is that Kant's views on the mechanics of knowing are out of date comparison to a full-scale phenomenology of the senses and perception as seen in the work of Merleau-Ponty. The claim that being is knowable involves the vast theories of being. I've just dealt with being is unknowable and the Kant's philosophy about being unknowable. Now I am talking about being is knowable. And the claim that being is knowable involves the vast theories of being. The only common element is the claim that knowledge of being is possible, and that we can know something, if not all, about being, since the knowledge of being and the definition of being are partially related. Hello. Are you following me? We turn to the different definitions of being and involve the questions of how being is also known. The very first I want to address here is being is limited to what can be seen. In its various forms, men who hold the philosophy of naturalism argue that visible world is all there is. Because if you're a naturalist, you hold on to only the world you're living in. You do not believe in the supernatural. So you do not even believe in the being. But what can be seen, what can be touched, etc., is, and what cannot be seen or touched, etc., doesn't exist. This way of looking at nature may be called monism. Monism, or monism of matter. Monism of matter, in which all reality is reducible to nature or atoms. It is a nothing but philosophy. Reality is nothing but matter atoms or cause-effect mechanisms. Wherever the form of naturalism is limited and by sense verification. That is, it's only sense that can verify it, our senses that can verify it. The questions may now be raised about this definition of being. If a man is considered, his mental powers must be reduced to chemical or electrical explanations, which are inadequate or treated unjustly, then the appearance of the mind in a natural world is as difficult to explain as the appearance of life. Naturalism treats the laws of nature in a superficial manner. Laws are interpretative, but are non-existent devices for explaining events and happenings in nature. Laws are key, or we can say laws of nature, they are key to understanding and scientific progress. Thus, science will not exist without mind and reason. And this should take precedence in explaining the physical. You see, if nature is to be known by scientific methods, the method is restricted to knowledge related to a physical or chemical type. Can there be other ways of knowing the reality that can take one beyond the merely visible? That's a question we need to ask ourselves, we need to ponder on, and we need to answer. Can there be other ways of knowing the reality that can take one beyond merely visible? Is there more than the physical world? Our next view presumes so. And that's why we have the two worlds theory. The two worlds theory A. The term two worlds was first introduced into philosophy by Lask and referred to two different theories. The first type of the two world theory is that there is a higher world than the visible, and the visible is not the real world. Hello? Are you getting what I'm saying here? When Lask introduced the two world theory, you have theory A, you have theory B. And the first type of the two world theory is that there is a higher world than the visible, and the visible is not the real world. It is only in appearance. Man is essentially a unitary part of the world. This identity of the man and the world, or man and the world soul, the spirit back of the appearances, makes it possible for a man to claim that when he knows himself, he knows being. Hello. Man. Theory of worshiping. And this view is accepted in various degrees by idealists such as Plato, Whitehead, Taylor, Browning, Hegel, and forms of Hindu thought associated with transcendental meditation, and Christian Science, to mention only a few. Let me go back, because I really want you to understand what I'm saying here. The very first type of word theory is saying that the identity of the man and the word, or man and the word soul, the spirit back of their parents, makes it possible for a man to claim that when he knows himself, he knows being. And this view is accepted in various degrees by idealists such as Plato, Whitehead, Taylor, Browning, Hegel, and forms of Hindu thought associated with transcendental meditation and Christian Science, to mention only a few. We can look briefly at philosophy in the contemporary scene, which incorporates some of these ideas. Karl Jaspers is a philosopher who believed that being manifests in objects but is not defined by utilizing the objects. There are two kinds of beings in the world, subjects and objects. But being is more significant than both of these. The cliché that the whole is greater than the parts is valid here. Jasper calls it the comprehensive. The comprehensive is manifested in objects, but objects do not explain or expose the comprehensive. Hence, one cannot, using philosophy, get to being. It can be done only indirectly. Then how can being be known? Jasper points to mysticism as the answer. The mystic is the person who transcends the subject-object dichotomy and achieves a total union of subject and object, in which all the objectiveness vanishes and the I is extinguished. Then authentic being opened up to us, leaving it behind as we awaken a consciousness of profound and inexhaustible meaning from our trance. Jaspers comments that being is indescribable, and being that can be communicated is not being. But he claims the mystic is immersed in the comprehensive. All of this sounds very romantic and appealing, but it doesn't give us much information about being. The true mystic cannot communicate, and being cannot be seen. How then can we describe being? If being cannot be seen, how then can we describe being? How can we know about it? What does the mystic see? Can we say that being or the comprehensive is related to God? Jasper does this in some sense, but says God is real, absolute, and cannot be encompassed by any of the historical manifestations through which he speaks to men. This will tend to make our little knowledge of God even smaller. Thus, if we cannot regard the knowledge of God in philosophy or theology as meaningful, how can we know that the mystics are? How does one know when one has found being? These are philosophical questions. that we should ponder on. The introduction of a mystic's path to needing further comment for the mystic is not an easy person to define. It's not. The mystic comes in two breeds. The first mystic claims that the journey inward through mediation leads to oneness with being. Being is found within. It is claimed that I am one with the word soul. And since there is a union between the word, soul, and me, the only obstacle to knowing being is in me. If I transcend my identity in meditation, if I transcend my identity in meditation, I come to being. Rooting out the ego leads to the depth of the inner being. The second breed of the mystic is the one who seeks a union with God, which is outside himself. With meditation, purgation of the soul, and prayer, the mystic seeks to achieve a union with God, who is outside or external to man's being. The mystic's path to being is questionable. Neither of these forms asks the obvious question: why is the being God hidden? Why is God hidden? If being is God, why is he hidden? We don't see being as we see the truth, nor do we see God similarly. If we equate man and God and seek knowledge of being or God inwardly, we change theology. Knowledge about God into anthropology, or knowledge about man. The distinctions between man and God are: with the God is outside of himself, then what is the basis of our trying to achieve this union? Let me go back. The distinction between man and God are blood. Okay? They are blood and probably meaningless. If you follow the second mystic's route of trying to achieve union with a God who is outside of himself, then what is the basis of our trying to achieve this? That is the bearer model of mysticism. But who calls for this type of practice? And can man, by searching, find the hidden God? Either within, which is within the meditation, or outside himself. Man can doubt or intuit what God is about. But can you know a being who does not allow himself to be known? On the other hand, granting that God does reveal himself, the myths of the mystic are superfluous. And I know in theology, in Christian theology, that God reveals himself to some people, but partly, not fully. Now, let's look at the two words theory B. The two words theory B. The two words B is a competing theory from religious thoughts influence. And this form of the two words theory is described as contingent dualism, i.e., the material world depends on God. The previous view was a spiritual monism, in which the physical world is a secondary part of the theory. Man must transcend the physical and live in the spirit alone, While it advances beyond naturalism to include the spirit, it ultimately has little use of the physical. This two-world theory combines the visible and invisible. An Augustine theory of God develops something of this. Part of the differences between these two-world theories can be seen in the following contrasts. AB. God is identified with the God who creates the world, but the world is not identified with it. Ultimate being and man are one, not one. Nature and God. God is internal. Nature is external. Nature is created. This form of the two worlds theory involves the following. God is the creator. The material world exists because he spoke into existence, and his continued existence depends on his will. Thus, we have a contingent dualism in which matter depends upon spirit but is not the same as spirit. The matter has its being or existence in God, but is not a part of the manifestation of God. How does a man get to know being? How does a man get to know being? He can know one part using the senses, the physical part. How can he know the other part? Ultimately, God cannot be known unless God is personal and reveals himself and his nature. At best, there may be hints of this expressed in nature, but the world does not have perfection. Even if using nature, the conclusion is reached that God is, there is no means of bridging the gulf separating man from God. At this point, being or God must be viewed as personal. Anything less than personal could not communicate with man, nor man with it. So Christians claim that the incarnation event gives a way in which man can come to know being. God became incarnate in Jesus Christ of Nazareth. He was a faithful God and man, and he was the embodiment of the visible and invisible. Jesus combines the temporal and the eternal. Grant this view as an explanation, one can know God who seeks, who reveals himself. In summary, man's search for being has led to various conclusions. Philosophers with a regional scientific outlook have been satisfied to stop at nature. Others have found this empty and sought a spiritual dimension to the world. Yet, others in the Christian tradition have not only argued for a spiritual dimension, but have felt that ultimate reality can be known only in the way of incarnation. Part of these differences may be seen in the comment of Kant, who wrote, "There's no single book to which you can point as you do to Euclid and say, this is metaphysics. Here you can find the noblest object of the science, the knowledge of the highest being, and feature existence proved from principles of pure reason." The influence of Kant has been vital in dissuading metaphysical activity, but the last phrase will be inapplicable to those who seek religious metaphysics. The Bible does not attempt to prove from principles of pure reason, But Christian philosophers will argue that the Christian option for some answers to metaphysical questions is still open. Here is where you learn about the highest being and a future existence. If it is not in the last alternative, then philosophy per se has not taught it, nor has it the tools to do so. We seem to be shut up to some alternative. Either we know being using self-revelation, or we are pushed toward insufficient or skeptical knowledge about being. We now turn to a different type of issue in metaphysics. I hope you are following me as I was talking about different philosophers' views, submissions about being and the two worlds world. Metaphysics is very interesting. And wherever you are coming from mysticism, mystical side, natural side, theology side, you are looking at spiritual monism, you are looking at any kind of thing. There's no way you will not love metaphysics and metaphysical issues in philosophy of religion. Thank you for joining me today. Keep your fingers crossed. Join me on Friday for another interesting trading issues. And then next Tuesday, I'm going to continue with the metaphysical issues. Have a lovely week.